Let's start 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia. The first cities had a problem. Barley was heavy. If you wanted to trade 100 liters of barley for a cow, you either carried it yourself or trusted the temple priests to keep records. So around 3000 BC, they invented the first money, clay tablets with marks showing who owed what to whom. That's right, money began as debt, not as coins. Fast forward to 600 BC in Lydia, modern Turkey, King Croesus, yes, rich as Croesus, started stamping pieces of electrum gold-silver alloy with his lion emblem. For the first time you had portable, standardized, government-guaranteed money. Coins exploded trade across the Mediterranean. But here's the twist most people miss. Within decades, those same Lydian kings discovered they could mix in cheaper metals and issue more coins than the gold they actually had. The first debasement, the first inflation, the first lie baked into money. The pattern was set. Every new form of money starts pure and ends corrupted. By the year 1000 AD, Europe was a financial backwater. China had paper money centuries earlier, but in the West, coins were scarce and trade was dying. Then came the unsung heroes of financial history, Italian banker families of the 12th-15th centuries, the Medici, the Fugger, the Bardi. In Florence, in 1252, they did something insane. They minted a gold coin called the florin that was exactly 3.5 grams of pure gold and promised never to debase it. For 200 years, they kept that promise. Result: Florence became the richest city on earth, but the real breakthrough was invisible. Double-entry bookkeeping and the bill of exchange. Suddenly, a merchant in Bruges could write a promise to pay in Venice 6 months later and sell that promise to a banker for cash today. Credit was born. Time itself became tradable. By 1400, tiny Venice had a public debt market, the Monte Vecchio, that worked exactly like modern government bonds. Interest rates were published weekly on the Rialto Bridge. This is the moment money escaped the physical world and became an idea. Fast forward to the 1700s. Two events showed what happens when credit grows faster than reality. 1711 to 1720, the South Sea Bubble in Britain. The government gave one company monopoly rights to trade with South America that barely existed in exchange for taking over the national debt. Shares rose 900% in months. Isaac Newton lost the equivalent of $20 million today and famously said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." 1720. Across the Channel, John Law convinced the French regent to issue paper money backed by the future riches of Louisiana swampland. For a brief moment, France had the world's first millionaires on paper. Then the Mississippi Company collapsed. The currency became worthless. And France swore off paper money for a century, setting the stage for the French Revolution. The pattern: massive credit expansion gives asset, bubble gives panic, gives total reset. After Napoleon, Britain did something radical. 1821. Bank of England notes became convertible into a fixed amount of gold on demand. Other nations followed. For the first time in history, most of the world used the same monetary yardstick. Result: 1870 to 1913 is still called the first era of globalization. Railways, telegraphs, steamships, all financed by London bond markets issuing debt in gold-backed pounds. Living standards in Britain rose 50% in one generation. Child mortality plummeted. Life expectancy soared. It felt permanent. But there was a hidden crack. Wars are expensive, and gold is finite. August 1914. Every major power suspended gold convertibility to print money for World War I. Germany went furthest. By 1923, a wheelbarrow of marks couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Savings of entire lifetimes wiped out. A young Austrian artist, who had his army pay destroyed by inflation, took notes. His name Adolf Hitler. 1931. Britain abandoned gold again during the Great Depression. 1933. Roosevelt confiscated Americans' private gold and devalued the dollar by 40% overnight. 1944. Bretton Woods tried to fix it. Dollar backed by gold, other currencies backed by dollars. But the U.S. kept printing dollars for guns, butter, and the Great Society. By 1971, foreign central banks were cashing in dollars for gold at an alarming rate. August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon closed the gold window. For the first time in history, all money on Earth was backed by nothing but promises. Since 1971, global debt has grown from $3 trillion to over $305 trillion today. Central banks have printed more money since 2008 than in all previous history combined. Look at these numbers. U.S. federal debt, $36 trillion to 130% of GDP. Global derivatives notional value estimated. $600 trillion, $1 quadrillion. Bitcoin went from $0.003 to $90,000 plus because people no longer trust fiat. In 2020, the Fed's balance sheet grew by $3 trillion in just 6 months, more than it created from 1913 to 2008 combined. We are living in the largest credit expansion in 5,000 years of recorded history. Every previous one ended the same way. Money is always and everywhere a technology of trust. When trust in the issuer breaks, the money dies. Whether it's Roman denarii, Weimar, marks, or tomorrow's dollar. Credit expands until it can't. The moment new debt can no longer service old debt, the music stops. We are mathematically closer to that point than at any time since 1945. Hard, scarce, money, gold, silver. And now Bitcoin always returns after fiat failures, not because people love shiny metals, but because they are the only assets that cannot be printed when politicians panic.